Hey guys, this is part 2 of episode 2, Don't Feel Like Fighting Anymore. We decided to split it up because, well, we have a lot to say around conflict and marriage conflict and all the conflicts. So if you haven't yet listened to episode 2, which is part 1 of this podcast, you'll want to check that part out. But if you want to come straight to the real nitty-gritty, which is what we're about to get into now on conflict resolution, which all ties in to track 1 on the Story of Us album called Don't Feel Like Fighting, then you're right where you want to be. Thanks for listening. So Fallon, talk to me about some of your favorite lyrics and about the song and the meaning of how they mean to you and all that fun stuff.
Cool. So there's specific lyrics or specific words that really stuck out to me. So I'll talk about this. So in verse 1, without reading everything, we talk about sleeping separate and how another night we're sleeping separate, right? And how many nights have we slept separate? A lot. We'll just leave it at that. We've done this a lot throughout our marriage. I love, so there's this phrase that I've heard my whole life that is, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And I used to be like, yeah, we need to work it out at all cost, at all expense until it's resolved. And now in my opinion, this phrase is so wrong. It is so wrong. How I've come to that conclusion is really in recovery and therapy and a lot of contracts that we've signed, a lot of agreements and things we've talked about. But really it's sometimes you just need some rest. Sometimes you just need to go to bed. You just need to start over. And I think that we have had to really, well, firstly, we have agreed on we are not going to have any serious conversations past a certain time in the evening. And we have negotiated that time because it just gets ugly. And it happens so quickly, which I'll get into that in a second. But it just, any time past a certain time for us, nothing pretty is going to happen. Nothing pretty is going to be said. I mean, it just happens quickly because we're exhausted.
Yeah, it makes sense.
We're just exhausted.
Past a certain point in a long day,
right.
We're exhausted and we are in no state to be having serious conversations.
Absolutely not. And what's so funny, I mean, it's not funny, it's so silly, really, is that sometimes it cannot even be like we're trying to have a serious conversation. It can be the way that Chad looks at me or something small that he says or
something
a joke.
I do with my body language.
And I just go through the roof. And so
then I get frustrated that she's going through the roof over nothing. And then you get frustrated that I'm not listening to you and that you don't care. And then next thing you know,
we're there. We are full on having it out. And it just, it's so interesting. So all that to say, I could not disagree more with that phrase. I think that sometimes, which let me say, there's a proper way to go about it. Not I need rest, I'm done with this. It's hey, these are my feelings. I'm so tired. Can we please reschedule or schedule a conversation tomorrow or whenever the next available date is that we can sit down and get together and dialogue about what's happening or talk about this issue.
And that's probably the most important thing about that. If you are going to postpone a conversation, you have to come back to it.
You come back to it.
It's so easy for me to just say, can we talk about this later? We'll talk about this tomorrow. Okay, fine. and then I have
And then
no
we don't.
intention of actually bringing
Right.
it back up because I don't want to fight.
Right.
I don't feel
Which
like fighting.
everybody's different, but for me, that causes further hurt.
Yeah.
It causes further doubt and like,
It does more so for me
care?
because I don't want to fight. I'd rather just
'Cause you
pretend
don't like conflict.
I don't like dealing with feelings. Like
Sure.
that's a thing I've had to work through a lot is dealing with feelings and emotions, and that's
Yeah.
one of them. And I don't want to fight about it.
Right.
I'd rather just pretend like everything's fine.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
Yeah. So all that to say, sometimes getting rest to not rage or to lose serenity is the best solution to
And this
keeping
can also
sane.
happen in the middle of the day. It doesn't have to be
right.
at night.
You're right.
Like this can also be a bad time. Like I'm feeling super irritable. Is it halt, hungry, angry?
Dang it, you stole it.
Oh, did I
That's
steal
coming
it?
up.
I stole it. Anyways, halt. Well, now that I'm talking about it, there's this thing called halt that we live by. Like I like to use as a reference point. You're angry that I'm giving
No,
this away.
no, go ahead. I'm so glad that
Halt.
you know it.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
And you can add an S.
You can add an S. Halts.
Halts, and S is stressed,
Stressed.
which is,
So
that's great for me.
oftentimes if you are any of those 4/5 things at any time, if you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're lonely, or you're tired, that is a bad state to be in. And it's a very easy state to react.
Lose it.
To not to
Yeah.
be defensive, to react. It's very hard to
Instead of
receive
being
things
right,
and
and
listen.
instead of being responsive, like it's one thing to react versus respond. All that to say, with the sleeping separate thing, there are times where sleeping separate is the best option. And for me, it's so I don't rage. Like, because honestly, like if you were to stay, I'm not sleeping. Like if I am in a very angry state, I cannot self-soothe with you right there. I'm the type of person that wants to resolve things and not let things linger and, hang over our heads. And I like a solution and then I want to move on. And for me, that's impossible. If you're sleeping right beside me, it's just sometimes easier just to get a break.
Yeah.
And
it's also worth saying that like that, just because that works for us and that's what we eventually learned that is best for us,
right,
doesn't mean that's best for everybody.
Right.
Like I know friends who like their motto essentially is like you'll never sleep apart or separate, and so no matter what
That's
they
really
say bed,
sweet.
and that's great. That
Yeah.
works for you. For us, that can't work, or
Right.
we'll just be up in the middle of the night
Well, and I think
getting nothing done. But fighting.
I think right now, that's
Yes.
just kind of where it is.
That's
I
true.
think that as I grow as a person, I may be able to, take the time out that I need to self-soothe and then come back to bed and be more serene. And
Yes.
yeah, it's a process. Progress, not
Makes me
perfection.
want to talk about the 20-second thing.
That's coming too.
I keep stealing your stuff.
Okay, anyway, so let's move on. So in the pre-chorus, really in both, but the first one, I'll just read the lyrics really quick. It says, "We're up, we're down, no middle ground. You don't want to talk, I put up a wall. You don't want to leave." So this is, I really think that this is a lot of old behavior, old processing for us. Recovery, at least it's taught me, and I think it's taught us both, a different way to handle conflict and how to get out of these dysfunctional conflict patterns. It's more about being in the middle, like we're up, we're down, no middle ground. I think we're trying to flip that. Like I think we're trying to find that nice middle ground and be able to stay serene and not go on this roller coaster of conflict, arguments, and emotions. So do you want to add anything?
No, I don't want to steal anything that's coming up.
Okay.
For you know?
I mean, you can. That's fine.
I don't think I can. I'm just kidding.
Yes, you
Are we about to demonstrate a fight? I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. So the chorus, I love the chorus. I don't feel like crying tonight, picking a side, losing our minds, just so we can say we were right. Because we're making it worse, throwing our words, crossing the line. Anyways, it's a great chorus. And I think really what I had to learn is it's not about being right. Like in an argument, I really had to let go of this idea of, well, my opinion is right or what I think is right. And so I have to get this across. or being in a mindset of like this, of winning essentially. And it's the ego wants that. The ego wants to be right or to prove a point. And I think the key is to remain open and willing to hear the other person and learn about their inner world. Like that's the opportunity there. It's approaching conflict in a different way. We learned a phrase recently in counseling that I actually really love. And I use this in several of my relationships, not just with you. But the phrase, "you may be right." And I love that phrase. It's so simple. Keep it simple. But it's like, okay, like I don't have to be right. I don't have to win, because the reality is whatever the person is bringing to the table, they could be right. It just may not be true for me. And that's okay.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Man, that whole thing has been one of the hardest things for me to learn. And it's just come with practice, and it's come with honestly, it's come with a lot of structure, and a lot of rules. I mean, a lot of the stuff we learn in marriage counseling and whatnot has helped so much with this, where, you literally, you essentially have a referee. You don't, like, we're not talking about the counselor, but our counselor said it best. It's like if, when you have conflict or whatnot, or no, the analogy is, put two teams in the Super Bowl, okay, playing football against each other, and imagine the Super Bowl being played, and there were no refs out there. They were just the teams, and they were just like, okay, let's play football, and there was no one reffing the game. It would be chaos.
That would be crazy.
It would be chaos. It would be. There'd be essentially everyone could go around the rules. There'd be no rules. Like it'd be chaos, and so. What we try to do in a marriage, especially in conflict, or if somebody's coming at it with some kind of a feeling or emotion that they need to just express, we've been doing it without rules, and that doesn't work. I mean, for us, it doesn't work. There's too much there for each of us as different people, where one of us won't feel heard at all. And that's a huge thing, is feeling heard.
Yeah.
The other person might get defensive, might just want to be right, just whatever. There's 1,000 things that can come up in those things that could create conflict. And at the end of the conversation, the person who presented something that they feel doesn't at all feel heard, So,
which can feel so defeating.
Yes, very defeating. And that's been a big thing with us, and a lot, and why these things that we've learned help so much is literally give us rules, which has been one of the things that I've had to throw my ego aside on. I mean, in fact, I know a lot of guys who would laugh at me in the face for doing this kind of thing. You know what I mean? But the way I've been doing it hasn't worked. It hasn't. Like, right. I can keep not wanting to have rules in place for this, and do these things that at first feel very weird and feel way too structured and feel artificial.
Right.
But that way works. And the way I've been doing it clearly doesn't work. Right. And so why do I keep refusing to change anything and just keep wanting to do something that clearly isn't working my way?
Well, and I think that these past few months that we have been incorporating that, we've seen, we are living experience of this stuff.
It's night and day
working.
Difference.
It is.
The amount of conversations we can have where we lead with feelings, and the person feels heard, and the other person feels like they heard them. Right. It's also something that didn't feel possible. You
are so right.
And yet it's feeling possible now.
I had in the beginning of this, I had, and still do on days, but had doubts. Like this just seems too simple, too artificial. I just don't think it's going to work. And boy, have I been wrong.
There's so much about this stuff, so much about recovery.
Yeah.
That it truly is a simple process.
It is.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it so impossible feeling are just our own egos not wanting to change.
Yeah.
Still wanting to hold on to my way of doing things. Right. And that is the part that causes this to not be simple and make it so hard. But when you can, and again, it's so much easier said than done. I mean, I'll still have plenty of weeks and days now where my ego still is trying to run the show and doesn't want to, pursue things that way and wants to do things my own way.
Well, I think it goes back to the surrender thing you were talking about earlier, which is. And
it's just all about a lot of things, but progress over perfection. Anyways, that's a good thing to bring up here. Good point.
So in verse 2, the lyrics are, I sing this verse, but I let it go too far. I knew it escalated over something so stupid. This room never felt so dark. Same team, but it's like we're losing. Makes me wonder if we'll ever get through it. I mean, that speaks to what we were just talking about. I just want to lay in your arms. So for me,
that's a good line.
How many times has conflict escalated so quickly over something, I mean, looking back, really stupid, because it can be like we get to the pinnacle of heated argument, or even afterwards where we're coming back down off that and we look back and we're like, what did this start over again? And we literally neither of us can remember what started. And I think I talk about it actually later on, but it goes back into our dance, the process, like throw out the content. It's the same process. But I will be the first to say that there have been so many things that have been said that are hurtful during conflict. And I think that, I mean, really what it comes down to is when those moments of like the heated escalation happens, there's something going on with both of us, much, much deeper. Some chord has been struck at our core. Something is going on. And I think in my work with step 1, my powerlessness, I have like certain themes that I have accumulated throughout my trauma and my childhood and my experiences. And, when those themes are, I'll give a couple examples. So I really struggle with fear of abandonment, and I struggle with fear of rejection. And I'm not going to go into why, because that could take forever and ever. Amen. But when those, even if it's something small, dishes, like I could work my way backwards into whatever has happened and realize, like these are my core, these themes, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. That's what's happening for me. And I think, anyways, all that to say, when we're escalated in conflict, I think that we are both not in a place of being centered, because I feel like even if one of us, from my experience with you, is even if one of us is in a more centered, better place, we're able to recognize that person is maladaptively functioning right now. Not to call that person out, but just a note, and to be helpful and to get them out of it, or say, hey, what I'm making up is there's more going on for you. Which I talk about that too in a minute, why that languaging is so important. But anyways, like you said earlier, halts, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed, those are essential. If one of those things are happening for me, I am not in a centered place. And then if you throw in one or two other things, I mean, how many times, like going back to the late at night, if I'm hungry and I'm feeling a little lonely, or if I'm tired and stressed, if those three things are combined, I'm off kilter. Like I am not centered. I am foggy. I'm not able to show up and be my best self.
For me too, oftentimes I struggle hard because, first of all, the feelings in general for me are something so new to my recovery and my work, is learning learning that it's okay and that it is healthy and you need, not you can, like you need to feel all the negative feelings, and I'm doing quotations negative because now in my work I've learned that there is no such thing as a negative emotion or feeling.
Yeah.
We are created to feel all of those things, and it's only when we don't allow ourselves to feel those things, which I did not allow myself to feel those things, and growing up in the Southern Baptist culture I didn't feel like I could feel or express those feelings. I did not, I basically, glad and anger were about the only two emotions that I felt safe to express. And anger only happened when you had no other choice. You just were angry, that was it. But now over the past couple years, doing the work I've been doing on learning how good and healthy it is to feel those things, because when you don't feel those things and don't allow yourself to feel those feelings when they're there, it comes out sideways. It comes out somewhere else, which is going to turn into something along my lines of addiction or some kind of character defect, or I'm going to take it out on you, or I'm going to say some half joke to somebody, or I'm going to insult somebody, or I'm going to be mean, or whatever. There's 100 things it can be, but it will come out somewhere. If I'm feeling angry, or if I'm feeling sad, or if something makes me sad, like what I've done my whole life is I'll use something to numb. You know what I mean? To keep myself from feeling those things, I will turn to 1,000 different things that keep my mind off of it and not let myself feel it. What happens is it comes out somewhere else. And usually that's projected on the people I love the most, and they get hurt by language I use or an act I do or something. Right. So all that to say, learning the feelings for me is difficult. My wife is like 90% of the time when somebody comes to somebody with a feeling around something, it's my wife coming to me, which for most of our marriage, I was just like, why are you always feeling stuff? Like, just stop, just be, just stop feeling these things. Like, why are you always feeling these negative feelings at me,
That makes me laugh.
And I just never, ever said anything to her about that because I didn't let myself feel those things. I would rather pretend they didn't happen, and pretend everything was fine like I have my whole life.
By the way, that's like insight into like conflict. Yeah. Like our conflict that we, in the beginning of marriage, it was like, why are you feeling? Well, I have feelings. I don't know. Like, I'm a person. And yeah.
And so I'll have to say, first off, like where we're at now, I'm learning, to let myself feel those things. If I feel something toward my wife, toward someone else, toward something else in my life, I have to let myself feel it. I have to. Because my tendency is I will turn to a screen of some sort as one of many things to numb. Like I'd rather tune out with a video game, or I'd rather tune out with a movie, or binge on TV shows, or anything but sit in it and let myself feel it.
And I feel like that's most people.
It is. That's 100%. But that's something I'm learning not to do because I don't want to feel it. And there's always a negative result from not allowing myself to feel it, even though I hate it. I really hate it. Like if there's something that makes me sad, especially sad as an emotion that I hate to feel, like if there's something that makes me sad, sitting in that is just like one of the hardest things for me to do. But the result but that pain and that sadness goes away, it goes away eventually. Yeah. And, but I have to let it sit there for a while and just let it do what it's going to do and feel what it's going to feel. Anyways, I'm getting off topic, but because of all that, I still to this day, it's hard for me to identify oftentimes if I just know something's going on. Like oftentimes, like we'll have some conflict start or something that like I initiate by being super irritable or reacting strongly in some way or just defensive. Yeah, defensiveness is usually my go-to. Right. I just instantly am defensive and just want to fight back and not listen. And oftentimes I'm getting to a place now where I can step back and be like, okay, something's going on. I don't know what it is. Or even, and oftentimes I can't even tell in the moment until the next day. Usually it's 24 hours later.
Yeah.
The next day, I can sit back and we can reevaluate what happened in that argument we just had. Like, why did you react that way? Here's why. And I usually can get in a place where I identify, oh, actually, I was feeling sad. I was feeling shame. I was feeling guilt or anger because of blah, blah, blah. And I can get to the core of it. But at least I'm identifying now. It just takes me like 24 hours to do that. And one of the big things I learned, I went to on-site like 6 months ago or whatever. On-site, it's a what do you call it exactly? It's a recovery.
It's a recovery. It's a counseling center. You can go and
it was best experience and investment of my life. But one of the big things I learned there was how your body knows before your head does, which is such a hard concept for me. Your body will tell you things before your brain does. And that's so true for me. When I can just sit and in meditation or whatever it is, or in everyday life, like I will feel these feelings and this tension. Usually for me, it resonates in different places for everybody. I know for you, it's like your shoulders, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's and some people it's their gut.
Yeah.
For me, it's in my chest. Like I will always feel some sort of feeling in my chest. And oftentimes I can identify that nowadays, and I'll like look at Fallon or something, and I'll be like, I don't know what's going on, but like I feel all this tension, and I can't even verbally tell you why or what is the core feeling I'm feeling right now, and why am I feeling this in the moment?
Right.
Because again, this is all still new to me. Even identifying that feeling is new to me.
Yeah.
But usually, like the next day or hours later, I almost always, my brain will catch up and my brain will be like, this is why, this is what you were feeling and this is why. And it all makes so much sense to me.
Because you've had time to process.
I've had time to process. Yeah. So all that to say, and when it comes to what we're talking about now in marriage, oftentimes we'll have conflicts and I'm feeling something and I don't identify it till the next day. And so that's why it's also important for us to take time out sometimes and to come back to it.
Yeah.
And because when I step out of that and I get out of whatever the place I was in, I can step back and be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take ownership for this. And taking ownership is also very important.
Yeah.
Because you learn from our program, we learn to look at things from what our role was. Like not looking at, and that's such a huge blessing about recovery is learning in 12-step program, is you don't ever look at anything in a conflict or a resentment you have and point at the other person. It all becomes what is going on in you that is causing this feeling and this reaction.
Yeah.
Because it's you, it's not them. In fact, some recovery guys carry something that literally in their wallet that they pull out and literally just says, it's you. And that's literally just
amazing.
to remind them that this feeling that they're probably feeling in anger or resentment they have, it is not them. It is something going on with you. And that's such a hard thing to learn.
Oh my gosh!
And that's
because
very
it's easier
much
to blame.
That's very much the case. It's so impossible. It's so difficult to look at yourself and like what's going on because it's so easy to blame other people.
Yeah.
And so for marriage, it's very much the case.
Right.
Like there's times, where you'll be coming at me with something that's going on, and I can literally just in my head just be like, I have no idea why she could possibly be upset at this or what she's even saying, because our just realities are so different.
Right, they're so different.
And like I say it sometimes, I'm like, I feel like we are on different planets. Like we are speaking different languages. Yes. And it's just...
I say we're not on the same page. Like, that's usually my go-to. It's like, we're just not...
No.
It's not our day.
No. And
it's not our day today.
And so... And usually that just has everything to do with what's going on with each of us, our feelings and emotions around it.
And I think it goes back to that, like, what I was talking about in the verse is it's not, like... Something isn't right with both of us. And I think that goes along with exactly what you were describing is like that feeling of what the heck is going on. I'm feeling these physical things. And yeah, that was really good. So in the pre-chorus, the second one, the lyrics are, we're bitter, we're sweet, we're two extremes. You don't want to talk, I put up a wall. And I think that we can both be bitter or sweet at the same time. It changes. I mean, and all of that totally depends on the circumstances of the day, which we kind of already talked about, but how much rest we've gotten the night before. It can also really depend on if I have done self-care. My self-care, and I've newly implemented doing yoga and meditation, which is so helpful, because that is what helps me recenter myself. Also connecting with people in my community, friends, family, is so important. And so all that to say, it's a lot of up and down, like life on life's terms, right? Like that's #life. Like it's going to be messy. And also we can be extremes. Like we can be two extremes. I love that line because like you said earlier, that's how we came into marriage. Like we were both very extreme, on opposite sides. But I think that, like I said too earlier, I think our goal is to move more in the center and not be in that spectrum of like the black and white thinking, all or nothing, or these two extremes that whatever the content is and whatever the conflict is, that we're trying to meet in the middle. So yeah. So that's it for lyrics. Those were the things that stood out to me the most. Something that, there's a quote that I love and also hate at the same time. It's a love-hate relationship, but it comes from the AA Big Book. And the quote is, when I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And wow, like the first time I heard that, it was so humbling. Anyways, I just think that quote ties in like this song. Like the reason that there's conflict is because of that. And I think the work for me has been around identifying what that is and then going back to steps 1, 2, and 3, going back to my powerlessness, going back to knowing that I need a higher power and a power greater than myself to return me to sanity, and then surrendering that. So yeah, I just love that quote.
That's awesome. Is that for the lyrics?
That's it for the lyrics.
That's it for the lyrics. I think there's...
I had some bullet points that I wanted to talk about for conflict. I think in the first episode, we really talked about wanting to put out like practical tools. And so that's what we're going to do. I would love to just talk about some practical stuff, some skills that we have been taught, we're learned, things that we implement. So with conflict, like we also said in the first episode, we have two different realities. And they're both valid, by the way. Each person has a perception, a worldview, a reality that's unique to them, and it's valid. Each person sees the world through their unique lens because of their experiences. And there's something, it's really conflict to me. This is what this means to me. But conflict, I see conflict as an opportunity to increase intimacy and empathy with you. And it's an opportunity to understand your worldview better. So you can take that and apply that to any relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, familial, coworker. I think that when conflict arises, that it's the most important, because it's such a sensitive place and such a vulnerable place, that's our time. That's our time to shine and to be supportive, to be all of these really good things that we want to feel, to also exude, with other people. it just feels really important. And I'm not sitting here saying like, I do this perfectly. No, like 9 times out of 10, I'm not living this statement. But I want to be a better person, and I want to take these opportunities and to posture myself in curiosity, humility, and wanting to build intimacy with whoever it is I'm in conflict with, to learn more about them, and while also feeling heard. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. Anyway, so moving on to feeling heard. When we're in conflict specifically, I'll speak from my viewpoint. For me, it has been like a hang up for me, and so difficult for me in not feeling heard. And what I've learned is that it is vital. I mean, take out whether you disagree or agree with that other person. I want to be known. I want to feel known by especially the person that I'm in a romantic relationship, and I want to feel heard. I want to feel that what's going on with me and how whatever has happened has impacted me. I want to know that you're listening, and that not that you're understanding, which is a huge, that's something that I had to really work on and get over. I felt like being a codependent, like I was taking on your reality and I was expecting you to take on my reality. So God forbid if you don't understand my feelings or where I'm coming from. Y'all, I cannot explain the tears that have been shed from feeling like, what? Like it's the end of the world that Chad does not understand my viewpoint. I mean, it's so painful. But really what I've learned is that it's key, it's foundation in a relationship to be heard. And that does not mean that the other person is going to agree with you. And it doesn't mean that the other person is even going to understand like where you're coming from or what you're even saying sometimes. And yeah, that was really hard.
Yeah, I'll just speak to that real quick.
Go for it.
That applies so much too with just, again, any relationship, not just marriage,
Yeah.
It's just important if somebody is willing to be vulnerable enough with you to share a feeling around a feeling they have around something that you did or something you said or an action that you did, whether or not you agree at all, whether or not whether if what they're saying, like everything in you wants to be like, oh, this is all your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Because first off, you need to look inward, which is hard. You need to look inward at, okay, listen to what this person says. Actually listen. And that is so hard. Like, so especially when you strongly disagree and think that this person's the one with all the, which
issues
usually isn't even true. Like, because again, it's just different perspective.
Right.
Like what you perceive as them having issues, like that's their stuff. That's not your lane. Like whether they do or not, and whether you're right or not. And most times you're probably even wrong because that's just their perspective of life and like something they perceive that you should have done or should have acted or should have said or shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
It's their perspective. And so try to hear it and try to listen to it, try to empathize with it. And then don't, for the love of God, say, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Right.
People say that to me. And
I think I used to do that.
I absolutely did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you feel that way. That's not taking ownership for anything. That's completely throwing it back at them. And it's just a backhanded way of being like,
sucks for you.
Like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, I mean, you're not responsible for their feelings. So yeah, just listen to them, apologize for whatever it is you did, and then negotiate. Or not just negotiate, but then give them the door should be open for you to give your perspective on the situation. Yeah. And what happens is you got two people, hopefully,
Right.
who are both listening and hearing each other and
Yeah.
growing closer.
Right.
And growing closer and understanding of each other.
Right.
And having empathy for each other. Now, more times than not, you're not talking to somebody who has working a 12-step program or going to counseling regularly or working on themselves.
Which is even
and so they
tougher.
are not going to respond the way that
Right.
you want them to because of what
Exactly.
you've learned. And then that's a whole thing. It's like, why don't they know this?
Powerlessness,
It's
right?
because they're doing the best they can in any situation.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can and where I'm at in life and where I'm at in that moment, in that minute of the day, I'm doing the best I can. And so that person, no matter how much everything in you says, wow, they have a lot to figure out, they are doing the best they can at the tools they have, at the level of awareness they have. And there's so much about their life that I bet if you were to actually have learned about and know, and if you were able to watch a film of this person's life, it would probably, everything about the way they are, the way they respond in conflict,
Yeah.
the way, whatever it is, it would make complete sense to you, you know? And so,
And
yeah,
I wouldn't be so quick to judge.
exactly.
Quick to think, oh, well, they should be doing this, or, making up stories in my own head about whatever's going on for them. And
Exactly. And you have no idea what they've
Right.
been through or what they've gone through in life, and they're doing the best they can.
right. And it's just the same for me. Like, I don't want anybody to perceive my outer appearance as like, oh, she hadn't gone through crap. And that couldn't be more off. And I think that there's a lot of people that are just so quick to judge.
And also, even on that, like, there are people out there whose perspectives have been through way more intense stuff than even we have.
Which
And-
blows my mind.
Which blows my, yeah.
I mean, honestly.
But it's also very
But it's
true.
so
There are
true.
people that have dealt with grief on a level that we haven't even touched, you know? And there's also people who we, in our perspective of what we've been through, are grieving or talking about working through or whatever, something that, and from what we've been through, we look at like, are they serious? Like, we could easily be like, are they serious right now? Like, they're making a big deal of their feelings. But the point is, we all have our own feelings, and it's our own realities and our own perspectives.
It's our own journey.
It's our own journeys. And we, like, just because one person is at this level does not make that person's feelings as valid as yours.
Yeah.
That's another thing in marriage. Oftentimes, I could have a feeling, for instance, and this is something we've been learning a lot and working through, is oftentimes I'll have a feeling toward my wife about something, but I won't express it because I feel I identify in whatever this feeling is that I'm upset about. I have done that to her at a much deeper, bigger level. So therefore, what I am feeling toward her about something isn't valid, but that's not true. And on the flip side, for my wife to learn that even though I might be coming to her about something that I have done to a monumental level that doesn't compare to what I feel around something I'm upset at her about, her also understanding I am valid in my feelings and I have a right to my feelings. And so for you to hear those feelings and not just instantly like, are you kidding me right now? You want to go there? Do you? No, she's never said that, but maybe she has. I don't know.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Like, after years of no feeling really, and then like lots of feeling, when you started sharing feelings, it kind of like, okay, like this is different, and I was challenged, and I had to learn, okay, the respect that I have been working so hard to gain, I also have to reflect that, mirror that, and give that back to him when you are being vulnerable with me. And so life is a challenge.
Yeah, that was the
It's
whole
just
marriage
interesting.
thing there, was all of a sudden I was expressing feelings and they were negative things toward
Right,
you,
it's
which
like,
I never, ever
whoa.
expressed.
Yes.
And it was like something you desperately wanted for me to be real like that. And then when I was doing it, it was like, how dare you?
Well, and then like I struggle, like I take personal criticism as a threat, which is a part of my program.
Yeah.
And so that
it falls into like abandonment almost, right?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
sure.
Or like rejection, like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
like I'm making this person feel these negative, which they're not negative, but this certain way. And then he's going to leave. He's going to leave. He's going to leave. He's not going to like me. I mean, all of those shame messages and all of those things come up, and they are real. They are hard to deal with. And so, it was really interesting when those things started to happen and realizing like, I've got to learn how to hold the space, something that I've been asking for all along. And now that we're working on, I've got to do the same. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Way easier said than done.
There are times in this process of conflict, even just on conflict in marriage, and there's so many other things, but even on just conflict that we'll just all of a sudden realize, man, this is a pattern. We have the same fight about the same thing.
Yeah.
And it just seems to keep happening. And then in those moments we'll be like, what? Like, I don't understand. Why are we making progress? Like, what's going on? Like, why are we making any progress? But it's not reality. We're making a ton of progress. There's just so many cycles and so many different things that we still have yet to scratch the surface on awareness over. Right. Even having awareness. Every day in this process, I know for me personally, like I will have suddenly a light bulb moment like of awareness of, oh my gosh, I do that. Or I do think like that.
Yeah.
Or, some sort of awareness that just makes it, that just helps so much in this process.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I can recall 2 incidences of us like mid-fight being like, this is a pattern.
Like,
hold on.
Wait up. Hold on.
Like,
something's going on here. Why do we keep doing this?
Yes. And that is progress. And being able to stop even mid-fight, like we're in the heated, thing, and being able to stop and say, okay, we got to slow down, which is usually what happens is we need to just stop and we need to slow down, time out. I don't know where I talk about that. The first step is
awareness, Nothing can happen without awareness.
Right. And we do this thing where highly advise it. The first time I heard it, I was like, that is so stupid. That is so stupid. Like, I'm not going to do that. No, it's actually a miracle. And I will say it is so difficult for me to take a time out. Like I said earlier, I just want to get to the solution. I want to work it out. Like, let's keep talking it out. And timeouts are so important. And that doesn't mean that you call a timeout for your partner. That doesn't mean they say something and you're looking at them like, you're triggered, you need to take a timeout. That's not what it is. No. It's if you say something to me and it triggers a reaction in me and I can feel it, hard to describe, but I can feel it. That is my opportunity to say, I need a 20-minute timeout. And the reason minimum 20-minute is suggested, there's so much science around it. Science. Look up on YouTube. I think it's like called monkey brain. If you look up that whole analogy, it is phenomenal. Like the monkey brain, the alligator brain, sometimes it's called. I mean, it's basically your trap door shuts. You are no longer functioning from a functional place, from a healthy place, right? And your maladaptive behaviors.
Your logic is gone. The logic part of your brain is cut off.
It's the maladaptive behaviors that start coming up and processing. And anyways, all that to say 20 minutes minimum. I mean, there have been times where we'll take hours, we'll come back and try to solve it, and it we're not able to. And so we, like I said earlier, we schedule it for the next day and we come back to it. But yeah, timeouts are really important. So hard, so much easier said than done. Seriously, like when you're in the moment.
Especially when you're codependents like we are.
It's bad because you're not wanting to hurt the other person's feelings, but you're needing to, it's just,
like for me,
it can get crazy.
Like for me, being also a codependent and knowing my wife struggles with abandonment, what feels more abandonment driven than
I need to go.
Time out. I need to take a walk.
Right.
Like that for me has been so hard for me to implement.
Right.
But because that's my codependency, caring so much about her feelings around it. And the healthy thing is I'm doing what I know I need in that moment. And I cannot let what I feel like her reaction is going to be and her stuff to affect what is going to be best for me in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to do.
That's why we've been coached to say, like, this is when I'll be back.
Always give a time
set
we'll come back.
30 minutes or an hour, like, always come back. Talk about what you're going to do and say, I'm coming back, and come back.
And what's insane about that whole trapdoor thing and the whole 20-minute thing and how real it is. I mean, I cannot think at the top of my head one time with us where something happened, some conversation started, something happened where we just started to go off to the races, our trap door shut or one of our trap doors shut, whatever, and we were just no longer adults and no logic and just pure emotion, and feelings.
Well, it's the fight or flight.
The fight or flight
That's what
thing
comes out.
And then when one of us is able to have some sort of clarity in saying we need a timeout or I need a timeout, I'm going to go take a 20-minute walk, 30-minute walk. We'll be back at 6:40, whatever. Or I'm going to go take a walk. Or I need to go make a call. I'm going to go call my sponsor. I'm going to go call a program guy just because I need to talk to somebody real quick, talk to a program person. And I cannot remember one time where we have done that and come back and it was not a great conversation from that point on.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
I think early in recovery, we did have a couple times where it was like, okay, not only do we need to like schedule it for another day, but we need to wait and talk about this with our counselor because this is not
It's too big
working.
of a thing to just dig in ourselves. So we'll wait. And then we're like, gosh, we have counseling in 2 weeks. We can't wait, but we do.
Yeah, so it's minimal. It has happened, but it is very minimal.
But the difference, I know for me personally, I will leave those conversations usually in an incredibly defensive, just angry at her, just angry at you kind of place where I just want to be right and I just want, and I can't, and I'm just in a state of, I can't believe she thinks like this, or I can't believe she's mad at me for this. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Something. And I come back in okay, I am sorry because I realized that I'm feeling this. I was feeling this before we even talked.
You are really good at that.
I was feeling this. I was feeling this.
Yeah.
Because it just, when you take that time and that part, that 20 minutes goes by and you get back to this, your adult self, and you're able to feel and take a second, to feel, what emotion am I feeling? What was I feeling before this conversation started?
Right.
And then but the huge difference is looking at it from a perspective of, where did I go wrong? Like looking inward. That's the huge difference, is looking, and instead of walking away from that and just keep in my head like, all right, what can I say that's going to prove me right? What can I do? And just thinking about stuff you said and how you shouldn't have said that and what you said this.
Yeah.
And like, instead of being
so
in that
easy
place,
to do.
but switching over to a place of humility and a place of, okay, what is it I did? What is it? Where was I at? What am I feeling? Where did I go wrong? Because it takes two people to get to that place. It always does. I mean, one person can be at a 10. We were talking about that 50-50 thing, a 10, but it doesn't mean the other person has to meet them there, Like, you can, because and it's easier said than done, of course, because of all the feelings that come up in that. But if you can just sit and listen, take ownership for stuff that you feel like you should take ownership for, don't just take ownership for stuff just to solve and fix a fight that doesn't do anything.
Right.
I mean, because sometimes at the end of the day, especially with you, sometimes at the end of the day, you just need to be heard.
Right.
Oftentimes,
I don't need
it fixed. You don't need me to say I'm wrong.
Right.
You don't need me to anything like that. You just need to speak something out to me.
Yeah.
And then you're like, literally, it's like a snap of a finger. We're done those conversations. You're a different person. You're back to being you, because I was able to talk out this feeling I have been feeling, and that's all you need. And that's usually all most people need, is to be heard. They don't need it to be fixed.
Core.
They don't need somebody to say they were wrong.
Yeah.
They just need to be heard.
It's a core desire is to be known and to belong. So I was just going to talk about like dialoguing. I think I've used that word a few times. Anyway, so really to start, it's important to use I statements. Simple, but very important. It's not you make me feel, it's I feel. So here's an example. I felt or feel, enter core feeling word, which there's like 7 of them. Anger, fear, hurt, lonely, sad, shame, guilt, and glad. I may be missing one. But enter core feeling. When you, and then include, like in there, insert specific behavior. Get out of the space of saying like, you made me feel. Like I think earlier, even when you're saying like, I'm sorry for the way you're feeling. Yeah, like get out of, I've had to learn how to get out of that verbiage of you made me feel this when you did this. Like it's your feelings, own it. It's my feelings, own it. Own your feelings. So what has also felt really silly to add into my phrasing, but it's very important, is the what I make up is, or the story I'm telling myself is, because really that's taking ownership, because you're not pointing the finger, blaming the person. This is the story I'm telling myself, or what I'm making up is that you don't like me right now, or you don't care, or whatever. And that really takes ownership. That puts it back in my camp of this could be totally off. And I think what it does is it creates a space for the other person to not react or like get defensive, and to be able, it's just different language. It's simple, but I think it's really impactful. Yeah. And I think that it helps the person take ownership in how they're perceiving the situation, because again, every person has their own perception. And so it helps own their perception of the situation, which I think is really cool. And then lastly, this is kind of in the dialoguing that we've recently learned to practice, but a request can be made. Now that doesn't mean that the listener in that moment is going to say, sure, I can do that. I'm willing to do that, or agree with the person, essentially. Really, it's just a request. It's my hope is that you can approach me differently next time this happens, or whatever it is, whatever the situation is about, it's a request for something about the other person. And I think that creates the safe space for negotiations to happen, which is really important. And also get ready. I'm talking to myself. Get ready. That request, it's very vulnerable. Like you've shared your feelings, you're sharing whatever's happened in the situation, and you're sharing a request, like a desire and a hope that I have. And so get ready for that other person to say no, and to say, really get ready and have the space, be able to hold the space of going ahead and knowing that other person may say no. Like, don't have the expectation that person is going to say yes. I mean, there's even an option of, I need to think about that request. Will you give me 24 hours? I mean, these are all choices. These are all things that I've learned, how to incorporate and, what to know.
Make a call.
Yeah. I need to talk to program people about this and recovery people, and I really need to filter some stuff. And all that to say, dialoguing is really important. And I think that this kind of stuff that we've been practicing and doing, which this is like practical tools that we have learned so hard, simple, really. I mean, it's literally like a sheet. Like there's a sheet that we follow. We just fill in the blanks, but it gets down to what is going on, like deep for that person. And it allows the other person to hear what the speaker is, feeling and what the request is. And it's providing a safe space for both people to feel like you were speaking into the rules earlier, like conflict needs rules. these are rules for us. These are things that we are, brand new in, but these are things that we are learning, even though it can feel artificial, how important it is to have these rules and guidelines and specifications so it's clear. So if I were to come to Chad and say, hey, are you willing to dialogue about something? Like we know that means like, okay, there's something going on. And you can say yes, or you can say, I'm willing, but not right now. Can we dialogue tonight at 6:00? Like all of those are choices. All of those are ways to create a safe space for both of us to approach feelings, approach life. I mean, really, this could have to do with anything like conflict or, really whatever. And it's just really helpful. It's really helpful to feel heard and to let the other person feel heard, and for this culture of safety and respect for the other person and for self, because this takes courage to do this. It takes courage to identify what is being felt, and then you're about to go tell your spouse about that and just hope that they don't have this, like my fear of rejection that I spoke about earlier, have this reaction and then they reject me or you reject me, and oh my God, like you're having this feeling, which it sounds silly, but it's so true and it's scary. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's all good stuff.
Thanks. Yeah.
What else you got?
I was going to say...
Counselor Fallon.
You're sweet. And really, so that was more of like the speaker standpoint. And so for the listener, what I've learned, if I'm taking the listening position, it is my job, I can disagree. I can feel all the feelings, whatever it is. What I am signing on to do, and when I say, yes, I'm willing, all I am agreeing to is show up. I am willing to sit here and to listen and to not fire back with my opinions or my disagreements, but just listen. And really, we've practiced a lot, and we've had this like active listening skill. And this is another practical tool, is what I'm hearing you say is that you're feeling sad because you don't have a cup of tea. Is that correct? And that could be 90% correct. It could be 50% correct, but you let that person know. And then you're able, if they were totally off, like you can ask for help too. Like if I couldn't remember, I could say, oh, I kind of lost. I wasn't tracking with you. Can you help me out? So all that to say, from the listener standpoint, you are really engaging in empathy and listening. And you're able to, in most situations, like repeat back to that person what they're feeling. And that is what helps them feel heard. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Hard, easy, different. It is hard. It's good though. It's really good.
It's hard. It's really hard for me. But also this is a really great tool for me, because being full of addictions and recovery, I spent my life disassociating, which means I usually my head was somewhere else in any kind of conversation with people. Yeah. So in turn and it was somewhere else because I just didn't want to be present. I'd rather be off in la la land somewhere else, just thinking of anything but having to be present with a human being, so I spent my life disassociating. So what that, and obviously for the first half of our marriage, I spent our marriage disassociating, which I learned is another form of an addiction, is not being present. Future tripping is an addiction in itself. And I heard that at Onsite, and I learned about so many addictions that I have a lot of, and everyone around me has, and just, different people or whatever. And I just, but learning some stuff like that, like thinking about that's an addiction because you are using future tripping and not being present as a form of numbing and a form of not being present,
and checking
which is
out.
what addictions are.
Right.
They're checking out, they're numbing, they're trying to feel good and, trying to feel good briefly, And so one of my things is checking out. And so I know for us is, future tripping. Like when I heard that future tripping is a form of addiction, I'm like, is there anything is there anything that is an addiction that I don't do? Like, am I ever present? That's what I said. I was just like, am I ever present? Ever? Because all the stuff that I learned about that that are addictions and forms of numbing, I step back from that. Like I am never present. There's always something
Right.
going on. Even if I am looking you in the eye, I'm not there.
You're somewhere else.
I'm not there.
Right.
I'm somewhere else. I'm completely thinking about something completely different, not listening to anything you're saying. And oftentimes you'll pick up on that. Be like, hey, are you with me? Are you with me? You with me? Like, yeah, totally.
I'll say, where are you? Where are you?
That's
right
what
now?
you say. She says, where am I? And I'll just be like, and I used to get defensive on that. Like, oh, I'm totally here. I totally heard what you said. And then just kind of put something together. But nowadays my first instinct is to be defensive, but then I can step back and be like, all right, yeah, I was somewhere else. I was thinking
it's better to be
my
honest.
head is somewhere else. Oh, it's always better to be honest.
Yeah.
Always. It's
Because
always
then
the case.
I'm like, okay, he was somewhere else. But he's coming back and
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is funny are the rare times where she asked that, and then I repeat everything she actually said, and she's like, "Dang it! I thought I got him."
I thought you.
Even though
weren't
really,
listening.
like at times like that, I think after I do, I'm like, how did I know that? Because I really wasn't there. Anyways.
That means you've gotten really good at disassociating.
Well, yeah, I did it my whole life. So on that note, so for me, these tools that she just talked about is so good for me to practice active listening and to practice being present and practice hearing what you're saying to the point that I can repeat it back because of my disassociating. That's a skill I don't have very good
I'm pretty
actually,
good at it.
Yeah, you're very good at it, is actually comprehending what people are saying to me. And that's a tool that I just don't have because of it. And so
Sure.
this exercise helps a lot with that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
I always start going down some other rabbit hole and then I pull it back.
But
I'm
you're
like,
just so
oh,
full
wait,
of knowledge.
Coming back to the topic.
It's so good. I love it.
It's the ADD going
Oh
off.
yeah. Chad has ADHD.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody
think.
knew. I don't know if we talked about that. So that
have.
was a real battle. He didn't know he had ADHD.
I still do.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like you didn't know that you had ADHD.
Before I ever took medication or
It
anything?
was about like 3.5 years into our marriage until he finally got diagnosed. He didn't even
How
know
I
what
ever
was going on.
survived without any sort
It's
of medicine
crazy.
toward it.
I don't know. I don't know how I didn't pick up on it sooner, but it's so helpful to know that now because it makes sense. It just helps make sense of what's going on.
Yep.
Yep. So really, I think it's just really with conflict, and just to wrap up like all those bullet points, conflict is the time to practice respect, empathy, intimacy, all of the things that are created in relationship with other people.
It's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I think it's important. And yeah. There is a quote by Brene Brown that I really like.
Bring it. Bring on the Brene.
Oh, it's so good. Empathy, it's talking about like the empathy thing. And empathy is no script. There is no right way or wrong way to do it. It is simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of you are not alone. And that's again by Brene Brown. And I think that we have such a unique opportunity in relationships, especially in romantic relationships, to have empathy and to practice all of those things. Even, I mean, outside of that, like, of course, like in friendships, I think that this can be practiced very vulnerably and authentically as well, in family and all of that. But
For sure.
yeah. So, real quick, I just wanted to go over like some, they're not really practical. Well, I guess they are kind of practical tools, but just things that I've learned that are really important in some of my training. And so I don't know if anyone has heard about Gottman, the Gottman Method, Gottman Institute, but they are incredible. I love their stuff. Something that they talk about are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And basically, they've just done a ton of research for several years over things. They can predict, give a pretty accurate percentage predicting couples divorce, possibility of divorcing. And they're pretty accurate. So anyways, in all of their research, they have narrowed down what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, which are consistent predictors of divorce. If these 4 things, if they continue in a relationship, intimacy is very difficult to establish, and it's very difficult for intimacy to flourish. So firstly, the first one is criticism. The definition is stating one's complaints as a defect in one's personality or giving the partner negative trait attributions. And so an example of that would be like me saying, you are so selfish because you always talk about yourself. The antidote to that would be taking ownership for feelings using I statements, which we talked a little bit about, and expressing your needs. They call this the gentle startup. So I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling hurt from our talk today. Can you please ask me about my day? So that's criticism. Defensiveness is number 2.
Sorry.
Defensiveness is I do it too. Defensiveness is self-protection or warding off a perceived attack by righteous indignation or putting self in innocent victim role. For example, it's not my fault we forgot the food, like essentially defensive and blaming the other person. So the antidote to that would be accepting responsibility for your part in the problem. For example, well, part of this is my problem. I could have set a reminder for us or for me. Number 3 is contempt. By the way, this is the greatest predictor of divorce. If this is happening, I forget the percentage, but it was very high, that if this was a common and usual thing that's being practiced in the relationship, the couple would eventually get divorced. And what that is it's statements from a place of superiority. Example, you're an idiot. So the antidote to that would be the couple really individually, but the couple establishing a culture of respect and appreciation while describing one's own feelings and needs. For example, I felt sad about not being included in your decision. I need an opportunity to express my opinion the next time. It's important to not describe your partner during that or what you think is going on with them. And then lastly is stonewalling. And the definition for that, it's basically emotional withdrawal from interaction. For example, the listener not participating in nonverbal cues or being attentive to the speaker. The antidote for that is to self-soothe and to do self-care in order to remain emotionally and mentally present and connected to their partner. This could look like asking for a timeout, which we talked about earlier. Self-soothe, which I do some of these. So these are some practical tools that I use. Self-soothing can look like meditation, calling a trusted friend, or for me, it's calling a recovery member, a program friend, which is important to filter, what's going on in my head, things I'm making up, or really just to find support. Breathing exercises, I thought they were really dumb at first, but they actually really work when I do them. Works if you work it. Journaling has been such a helpful thing for me. I used to hate to journal, and now it's become a part of my nightly, before I go to bed ritual. I've got to journal. Doing a self check-in, which can be a part of the journaling, or even just stopping for 5 minutes in the day to check in with myself and what's going on. What am I feeling? And lastly, doing a guided relaxation exercises. So some of these things you all will be able to look up on YouTube or do a quick Google search. And there are so many exercises out there that you can implement into your day, which is really cool. So that's it. That's all I have.
A lot.
I just want to say that it takes courage to do these things. It takes courage to do things differently than the way that I've been practicing them. You've been practicing them for however old or young you are. It takes courage to show up in relationships with other people. It's very hard. I just want you to know, whoever is listening, you are brave and you are strong. And I'll close with a quote. I love quotes. This one's by Brene Brown as well. Vulnerability sounds like truth and feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they are never weaknesses. And I think that that is really important, that it does take courage and bravery to look at self and to change lifelong patterns. And it is not a weakness to feel and to admit that you need help. I don't know where I would be if I didn't do those things and haven't done those things like on a daily basis. So thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for staying tuned if you're still with us. And I hope that even if you take one of these things and think it's cool and try to implement it, then I've done my job. Like that, I mean, I'm right there with you. Yeah. These things work, and that's why we're talking about them. Yep. So
that was all amazing. Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you for all your counseling wisdom.
You're sweet. Thank you.
It's been a journey, that's for sure.
It has been.
And we have a long way to go. We are just scratching the surface. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Thanks for scratching the surface with us, listeners.
Yes. Thank you all. We love you all.
We love you.
We will see you next time to talk about what song too?
Ooh, Next Right Thing.
No.
That's going to be a long episode, y'all. There might be a
Can't
lot
be
of
longer than this one.
There might be a lot of part twos.
Next Right Thing from Frozen 2.
Yes. Oh, y'all, it's probably my favorite song on the album, but
lyrics,
we'll talk about that next time.
So we'll get there.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.